Are you a fat, out-of-shape loser that smells like cheese? Well, if so, then this episode is for you, as Ricky Steamboat promises to whip you into shape, or you get your money back. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Tyler Vance Rants. I am your host, Tyler Vance himself. It is April 21st, 1984. Last week, the NWA World Tag Team Champions, the Briscoe brothers, Jack and Jerry, said sayonara to the Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling area and set sail for Florida. WWF World Heavyweight Champion Hulk Hogan returned to in-ring action and faced Tiger Chung Lee successfully in a non-title match. Also, Paul Jones dumped Assassin No. 2 as a client after being duped into signing a contract to face the Boogie Woogie Man, Jimmy Valiant, in a steel cage. As well, Dory Funk Jr. was suspended from the National Wrestling Alliance. With so much happening in the Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling area, we're going to tune into their secondary program first this week, Worldwide Wrestling. As soon as we tune in, we're treated to a tag team match between one of the men I just mentioned, the Boogie Woogie Maniac himself, Jimmy Valiant, and his tag team partner Brian Adidas against the team of Doug Vines and Gary Royal. Johnny Weaver is going solo on commentary for now, and he immediately makes it weird by saying,
Brian Adidas, good-looking athlete, and girls, this handsome young fella is single.
Weaver, why do you do this? Why do you always make these vaguely sexual comments, especially aimed at women? Stop it, please. The match is an absolute cakewalk for Valiant and Adidas, who ends up winning the effort for his team following a lame airplane spin finish. Johnny Weaver is that really weird uncle that makes things uncomfortable every time you and your family get together for holiday dinners. Well, that uncle is backstage, and he's got the NWA television champion Tully Blanchard with him for an interview. Sorry, not an interview. It seems actually, to my pleasant surprise, that Mr. Blanchard will actually be joining Johnny Weaver on commentary for the rest of the episode. Then, we're shown a video package of the champion himself. The point of the video package is to allow us, the fans, a chance to get to know our television champion just a little bit better. We're treated to clips of Mr. Blanchard speaking his mind on various subjects.
It's very bewildering to me how people can be so ignorant.
Getting dressed. As well as, of course, keeping in shape by working out.
Ladies and gentlemen, Tully Blanchard is a winner. Always will be a winner.
Next up sees Rufus R. Freight Train Jones take on Jeff Sword in singles competition, and
Jeff Sword, he's quite a hunk of man in there, Jeff Sword.
Johnny Weaver. I am no longer asking you to stop being weird. I am now telling you to stop being weird. Once the match begins, I am just absolutely baffled on how to describe the wrestling style that Jones brings to the mat. You can look at people like Dory Funk Jr. and even the NWA television champion on calling commentary right now, Tully Blanchard, and easily identify that they're both scientific and technical wrestlers. Assassin No. 1? He's a brawler. But Rufus R. Jones? Jello. Rufus puts Jeff Sword away following a headbutt. Alright, all you out-of-shape doughboys and girls, it's time to burn some of those extra calories you got weighing around and destroy the fat in that body, as Ricky Steamboat's exercise programs for the summer, like I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, are guaranteed to whip you into shape. Even better for you sweaty egg people, this is going to be a recurring weekly segment. Hey, it's all for your benefit. This week, Ricky Steamboat is teaching us all about the bench press, as well as explaining what it does to help further promote your body's structural strength. As he goes through the explanation, in the background, his wife demonstrates just how to do it properly. Did you catch all that? Good. And do you feel more in shape now that you know how to do a bench press? Of course you don't. You actually have to go out and do one. Sitting around's not going to get you anywhere. That's why you're out of shape to begin with. A man who has raised the ire of the Boogie Woogie Man Jimmy Valiant recently, the self-proclaimed exotic Adrian Streets, is in singles competition next. As he heads down to the ring to see his opponent in action, Pistol Pez Whatley, his manager and wife, Miss Linda, begins to pepper spray some kind of fragrance in the air. As the bell rings to signify the start of the match, Street immediately goes into the mind games department and tries to get through the skull of Pistol Pez Whatley as he begins to trot around the ring. I guess Adrian Street was never educated as a young boy to not play with guns. Pez is not falling for any of these mind games, and he strikes Adrian Street hard with several power moves. Street gets incredibly frustrated as the match goes on, as his continued attempts at mind games prove ineffective. Things begin to look bad for her husband, so Miss Linda hops onto the side of the ring in an effort to distract Whatley. This does work momentarily, but it's not long after before the pistol starts to get rapid-fire near falls on Street once again. The match comes to a sudden end when Adrian Street backdrops Pistol Pez Whatley over the top rope and onto the floor below. This is always a disqualification in the NWA, and it's just bad luck for Adrian Street. Backstage, Johnny Weaver quickly pulls Adrian Street and Miss Linda aside for an interview and asks them about what just happened. Street then goes on to claim,
"There was no DQ, I won, and I don't want to talk about him anyway. As far as I'm concerned, he is rubbish. I'm here to talk about myself, not somebody I've just beaten."
Adrian then for some reason brings up the fact that he's received a lot of recent fan mail from women all across the country.
"Do you know, Johnny, already I'm getting so much more fan mail than anybody else. And I've found that from these ladies, I would just like to say that when they look at me, all I can see is a beautiful swan. When I look at them, all I can see is fat little waddling ducks."
Don't worry, Adrian. Ricky Steamboat is on the case of those fat little ducks. We get to hear from the NWA United States Heavyweight Champion and rightful NWA World Heavyweight Champion, Dirty Dick Slater, next. Before Johnny Weaver is even able to ask the Dirty One any questions, Slater immediately lays into the current NWA World Heavyweight Champion, the Nature Boy Ric Flair, as well as Ricky Steamboat, who is for some reason still #1 contender. Dick Slater rightly states that if either the Nature Boy Ric Flair or Ricky Steamboat want the NWA World Heavyweight Championship, they'll have to go through him. Dick Slater then makes his way down to the ring to face off against his next opponent, Sam Houston, and the match is absolutely no contest for Dirty Dick Slater, who brutalizes his opponent. A double underhook suplex leads to the win for Dirty Dick Slater over Sam Houston. The team of Chief Wahoo McDaniel and his protege, Mark Youngblood, take on the team of Kurt Von Hess and Ben Alexander in tag team competition next. Jay Youngblood has temporarily replaced Tully Blanchard on color commentary for this match in a pitiful effort to try and make Mark Youngblood look good in any way possible. Speaking of Jay's younger brother, Mark Youngblood does actually demonstrate brief moments of promise in this match, but before he can really get going, he defers to tagging in Chief McDaniel instead. When Chief McDaniel is in the ring, he absolutely bludgeons his opponents and at least demonstrates a good deal of mentorship to his protege. When Youngblood does get tagged back in, he gets caught by Ben Alexander and almost loses the effort for his team. A very close near fall is almost secured, however the Chief comes to the rescue. It's unsurprising that shortly after that, Chief McDaniel and Youngblood secure the win. More tag team action is next in Worldwide Wrestling's main event as Gary Hart brings us his All-American team of the Pride of the Carolinas, Don Kernodle, and Ivan Koloff, in a tag team effort against Mark Fleming and Larry Hamilton. The crowd starts things off by chanting "bald-headed geek" at Ivan Koloff, which causes him to get distracted.
On that caliber, and you know that that's on their minds as being a tag team.
Well,
This leads to Hamilton getting a temporary opportunity against the NWA Mid-Atlantic Heavyweight Champion, demonstrating a great deal of athleticism. The teamwork of Kernodle and Koloff eventually proved to be too much for Larry Hamilton, and he gets isolated in enemy territory. Mark Fleming goes almost the entire match without getting tagged in, but once he does, he loses the effort quickly for his team. The Cannon, a double team move from Koloff and Kernodle, secure the win. To wrap up Worldwide Wrestling, Johnny Weaver has Pistol Pez Whatley backstage for an interview. Whatley starts to say that he's here to win and gain as much success as he can before he's interrupted by the man he won via disqualification against earlier, Adrian Streets. Street comes out because he's apparently very offended at the Pistol's improper use of the English language. A scuffle quickly ensues between the duo, and it leads to Pistol Pez Whatley getting sprayed in the face with mace before both Miss Linda and Adrian Street cover him in makeup. Chaos. Madness. If this is what we got in the NWA, I can only imagine what's in store for us on WWF Championship Wrestling. As we tune in, Vince McMahon is in what appears to be some kind of WWF control room, and this apparently is going to be a special episode of Championship Wrestling. What's so special about it, you ask? Well, let's find out. The first match we're treated to is joined in progress, and it sees Rene Goulet take on Special Delivery Jones in a recent match that took place in Madison Square Garden, so Gorilla Monsoon is on commentary. Neither man is especially gifted when it comes to technical wrestling, and so the match becomes a very slow and drawn-out encounter. Goulet manages to hit Jones with a tremendous forearm and gains the control of the match midway through. Special Delivery attempts to fight back, but Goulet lands another vicious forearm and remains firmly in control. As the match comes to an end, Goulet goes for something in his trunks, but misses SD Jones with it. He then gets caught with a headbutt from Jones and ends up losing the match. Damn it! I actually thought Goulet had that one in the bag. Despite this being a special episode, Vince McMahon still finds the time to bring us the regular weekly WWF update. This week's focus is on both Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff and the WWF Intercontinental Champion Tito Santana. The update finishes with Vince McMahon reading aloud a quote from Santana himself, who says that he is absolutely proud that he was the one to dethrone the former Intercontinental Champion, the Magnificent Morocco. And he's going to apparently reign with dignity. Whatever. Now this is a treat. The match we're about to see took place all the way back in 1975. Jack Evans, Johnny Rodz, and Joe Nova take on Andre the Giant in a 3-on-1 handicap match. Why is this match a treat, you might ask? Well, because we get to see Andre the Giant in his prime, and anybody who's a fan of Andre knows that that is a beautiful thing. Despite being outnumbered literally 3-1, the Giant absolutely devastates and makes mincemeat of his opponents. Sits on all three of them to get the pin. Cowboy Bob Orton absolutely controls the next match he has against Jose Luis Rivera. Orton outclasses Rivera in absolutely every category in this match and wins fast with a superplex. Another handicap match is next. This time it's 2-on-1 and sees the Cobra Corps Commandant Sergeant Slaughter himself, accompanied of course by his Cobra Corps Commando Terry Daniels, taking on the team of Mr. Fuji and Tiger Chung Lee. Some idiot in the crowd chants before the match even begins. Who do you think you are? First of all, you seem like the kind of guy that honks his horn the millisecond the light turns green at an intersection. Second, if you think you can put on a more entertaining match, you're more than welcome to head down to the ring and provide one for us. Shut up! Tiger Chung Lee starts things off for his team and gets to first-hand experience what it's like to be a Marine recruit on Ellis Island. Not to be counted out, Tiger Chung Lee lives up to his namesake and corners Sergeant Slaughter in his territory where Mr. Fuji lies in wait. Sergeant Slaughter fought in Vietnam, so he has first-hand experience of what it's like to be stuck behind enemy lines, so he quickly realizes what's about to happen and acts before he can get stuck. This causes Mr. Fuji to look on with concern. Despite the 2-to-1 advantage, Sergeant Slaughter is proving to be quite the tough nut to crack. Mr. Fuji eventually does get tagged in, and that's when he and Tiger Chung Lee begin to use their numerical superiority against the Marine. As much as I hate to give it to him, Marines do have a reputation for being tough as nails, and so Sergeant Slaughter fights back like his life is on the line. He does end up getting the win over Tiger Chung Lee with the Cobra Clutch. To wrap up this special episode of Championship Wrestling, we're treated to this week's segment of Piper's Pit, and this week's guests are no joke. They are the WWF World Tag Team Champions, Rocky Johnson and Tony Atlas. Roddy Piper acknowledges the WWF World Tag Team Champions for what they are.
Rocky Johnson and Tony Atlas, that happened to be the very first black heavyweight tag team champions in the history of wrestling.
He then goes on to try to get under their skin by making some very racially charged comments and jokes.
I've known a lot of famous blacks, such as these gentlemen. There's Shirley Temple Black. There's all kinds of them.
Piper is then almost immediately interrupted by Johnson, who says,
"We're not out here to listen to your smart remarks. You got anything to say, you say it and get it on."
Told to ask questions? Ask questions he shall. Roddy Piper hits the WWF World Tag Team Champions with a hard question. How can they claim to be true, legitimate, integrity-ridden champions since their victory to get the championships was tainted? This causes Rocky Johnson to reach the boiling point, but thankfully Tony Atlas is on standby to keep things diplomatic. And by keep things diplomatic, I mean he makes the same skirt joke at Roddy Piper's expense that we've heard dozens of times now.
You can't be too bad because you got the same kind of skirt my wife wears. Obviously, you're in trouble if I'm better looking than your wife.
That brings us to the end of the week. We were treated this week to the very special episode of WWF Championship Wrestling. And what made it so special? Well, we were treated to some very interesting matches, and I might say very good matches in some points, of the WWF's back catalog. As well, of course, we were treated to yet another racially charged segment of Piper's Pit. The NWA was a different story. Worldwide Wrestling brought us the flamboyant antics of Adrian Streets, everybody's weird uncle, Johnny Weaver, making weird comments, and of course, Ricky Steamboat's exercise program. You should all be thankful. Ricky Steamboat returned from retirement and competed in some matches, only to look out upon the sea of faces in the crowd and see people chugging away on pop, eating burgers, overflowing with grease, and not even able to sit in or get out of the chairs in the stands without some kind of assistance. He was appalled, and so he's taken it upon himself to make hit his personal goal to make sure you fatties hit your physical peak. How many bench presses are you going to do this week? Don't give me any excuses. Put the numbers down in the comments and make it happen. Thanks once again for tuning in to another episode of Tyler Vance Rants. Don't forget to like the video, hit the bell, and subscribe so you're always notified of when a new episode is released. You can also follow me on social media, where I hope you'll share it with your family and friends. That's all for this week. I'll see you next week. So long for now. No offense to anybody that's out of shape. Remember, this is all just a character. Next up sees Rufus R. Jones take on Jeff's... The first match we're treated to is Joined in Progress, and Teeks Police, what am I doing there? As the match comes to an end, Goulet goes for something in his trucks. Yeah, he goes up to the parking lot, says, "Hold on a second, I'll be right back."